Have you ever wondered what would happen if a single moment of honesty could change your entire life? Olivia Bennett never expected anything in return when she found that expensive leather wallet on the park bench. She simply did what she thought was right, turning it in without a second thought. But the very next morning, when a sleek black limousine pulled up outside her university dorm, she knew something extraordinary was about to happen. Standing in that mahogany-paneled office, facing the intense gaze of Alexander Hayes, the billionaire who had deliberately left his wallet as a test of character, Olivia felt her world shift beneath her feet. "Your honesty in a world of dishonesty," he said, his voice soft yet commanding, "is something I want to reward. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments." The autumn air carried a crisp chill as Olivia Bennett hurried across the university campus, her worn backpack slung over one shoulder. At 22, she was in her final year of studying literature, a passion that had sustained her through years of financial struggle. Her light brown hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her hazel eyes, often hidden behind wire-rimmed glasses, remained fixed on the path ahead. She wasn't the type of person who commanded attention when she entered a room. In fact, she preferred it that way, finding comfort in the periphery rather than the spotlight. The campus buzzed with activity, students moving between classes, friends gathering on the sprawling lawns, and professors striding purposefully toward lecture halls. Olivia navigated through the crowd with practiced ease, keeping to herself as she always did. She had a few friends, certainly, but her introverted nature and the necessity of working 2 part-time jobs left little time for an active social life. "Just need to get through this semester," she whispered to herself, a personal mantra that had carried her through difficult times. Her scholarship covered most of her tuition, but books, housing, and living expenses still required her to work at both the campus library and a local coffee shop on weekends. The constant juggling act left her perpetually exhausted, but Olivia wasn't one to complain. She knew that education was her path forward, her ticket to a better life than the one she'd known growing up. Her family situation was complicated at best. Her father had left when she was young, and her mother had done her best as a single parent, working multiple jobs to keep a roof over their heads. But illness had struck 3 years ago, and now her mother lived with Olivia's aunt in a small town 2 hours away. The medical bills had decimated what little savings they had, leaving Olivia determined to become financially independent and eventually be able to help her mother. She checked her watch and quickened her pace. Her shift at the library started in 15 minutes, and Professor Martinez had kept the literature seminar running longer than usual. The discussion on symbolism in modern fiction had been fascinating, but Olivia couldn't afford to be late. Mrs. Winters, the head librarian, was strict about punctuality, and Olivia needed this job. As she cut through Westfield Park, taking her usual shortcut, something caught her eye. A sleek black object lay on a bench beneath a large oak tree, its polished surface reflecting the afternoon sunlight. Curiosity pulled her closer, and she realized it was a wallet, and not just any wallet. Even with her limited knowledge of luxury goods, she could tell this was expensive, the kind of accessory that cost more than her monthly rent. Olivia glanced around. The park was relatively empty at this hour, just a few students lounging on the grass, and an elderly couple walking a small dog on a distant path. No one was near the bench. No one frantically searching for a lost possession. She approached cautiously and picked up the wallet. It was heavy, made of soft black leather with subtle embossing. The craftsmanship was exquisite, the kind of quality that spoke of wealth without needing to shout about it. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to appreciate the feel of it in her hands, so different from the bargain store wallet she carried, held together with more hope than stitching. "Someone must be panicking right now," she murmured, opening the wallet to look for identification. The first thing she noticed was the money-thick stack of $100 bills that made her breath catch. There must have been thousands of dollars inside, more cash than she had ever seen in one place. Her heart pounded as she quickly closed the wallet, suddenly feeling as though she was intruding on something private. For a fleeting second, a thought crossed her mind how much she could do with that money. Pay off some of her student loans perhaps, or help with her mother's medical bills. The temptation flickered like a weak flame, but Olivia extinguished it immediately. Taking something that wasn't hers wasn't just illegal. It went against everything she believed about herself. Her mother had raised her with a strong moral compass, often saying, "Our integrity might be the only thing we truly own, Livy. Guard it carefully." She opened the wallet again, this time bypassing the money to look for ID. Behind a clear plastic window was a driver's license for Alexander Hayes, with an address in the most exclusive part of the city. The photo showed a stern-faced man with piercing eyes and an expression that seemed to evaluate the viewer. Olivia felt an odd sensation, almost as if those photographed eyes were judging her actions in this moment. There were also several credit cards, all black with minimal desiant, the kind that didn't display spending limits because the owners never had to worry about them. A business card in a small pocket identified Alexander Hayes as the CEO of Hayes Innovations, the technology company Olivia had definitely heard of. They were pioneers in sustainable energy solutions and cutting-edge consumer technology. Definitely returning this, she said to herself, already calculating how this detour would affect her schedule. She would be late for her shift, but Mrs. Winters would understand if she explained the situation. Some things were more important than punctuality. She considered her options. The police station was on the other side of campus, which would make her very late. The campus security office was closer, and they had a lost and found. That seemed like the most sensible solution. Surely someone like Mr. Hayes would contact the university when retracing his steps. With her decision made, Olivia changed direction and hurried toward the security building, a small brick structure near the administration offices. Inside, the air conditioning was a welcome relief from the autumn humidity. A middle-aged security officer looked up from his computer as she approached the desk. "Can I help you?" he asked, his expression neutral but not unfriendly. "I found this in Westfield Park," Olivia said, placing the wallet on the counter. "I thought I should turn it in." The officer's eyebrows rose slightly as he took in the quality of the wallet. "Did you check for ID?" "Yes. It belongs to someone named Alexander Hayes. There's quite a bit of cash inside, too," she added, feeling it was important to mention. The officer picked up the wallet and opened it, his eyes widening momentarily at the contents. "I see," he said, his tone more respectful now. "We'll make sure this gets back to its owner." He pulled out a form from a drawer. "I'll need your name and contact information, please." "Is that necessary?" Olivia asked hesitantly. She wasn't looking for recognition or a reward. She'd simply done what anyone should do. "Standard procedure," the officer explained. "The owner might want to thank you." Reluctantly, Olivia provided her details. She doubted someone like Alexander Hayes would bother to thank a nobody university student, but rules were rules. Besides, she had nothing to hide. "That's very honest of you," the officer remarked as he filled out the form. Not everyone would turn in a wallet with this much cash inside. Olivia shrugged, uncomfortable with the implied praise. "It's not my money," she said simply. With the form completed and the wallet safely in the hands of campus security, Olivia hurried to the library, now officially late for her shift. As expected, Mrs. Winters was not pleased, but her expression softened when Olivia explained where she had been. "Well, I suppose being a good Samaritan is an acceptable excuse," the librarian conceded. "Now, there's a cart of returns waiting to be shelved." The rest of Olivia's day proceeded as normal. She worked her shift, attended her evening class on British Romantic poetry, and returned to her small off-campus apartment, the wallet incident already fading from her mind. She had an essay to finish, bills to pay, and her regular call with her mother to make. The discovery of an expensive wallet belonging to a wealthy CEO was just a brief interlude in her busy life, nothing more. She couldn't have known that at that very moment, in a penthouse office 42 floors above the city, Alexander Hayes was studying her name on a security report, his expression thoughtful as he considered what his next move would be. The following morning began like any other for Olivia. She woke at 5:30 a.m., made a cup of instant coffee, and reviewed her notes for the day's classes while eating a simple breakfast of toast and peanut butter. She showered quickly, dressed in jeans and a comfortable sweater, and gathered her books. By 7 a.m., she was out the door, ready to catch the bus that would take her to campus. What was not routine, however, was the sleek black limousine parked directly in front of her apartment building. Olivia noticed it as she stepped outside, but paid it little mind, assuming it was waiting for one of her neighbors. Her building wasn't in the most upscale area, but it wasn't uncommon for luxury vehicles to occasionally appear, usually when parents visited some of the wealthier students who lived there. She was halfway down the block when she heard footsteps behind her, and a deep voice called out, "Miss Bennett? Olivia Bennett?" Turning, she found herself facing a tall man in a crisp black suit. His posture was perfect, his expression professionally neutral, and his overall appearance precisely what one would expect from a chauffeur. "Yes?" she answered cautiously, her hand tightening on the strap of her backpack. "My name is James. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Alexander Hayes," the man explained, his tone respectful. "He would like to speak with you this morning, if you're available." Olivia blinked in surprise, her mind immediately connecting the name to the wallet she'd found yesterday. "Mr. Hayes? The owner of the wallet?" James nodded. "The very same. He was most impressed by your honesty and would like to thank you personally." A mixture of emotions flooded through Olivia's surprise, confusion, and a trace of anxiety. Why would a billionaire CEO want to thank her in person? Surely a simple phone call would suffice, if he felt compelled to acknowledge her at all. "That's really not necessary," she said, already calculating how this unexpected development would affect her schedule. "I just did what anyone would do." A hint at a smile crossed James's face, as if he found her response amusing. "Mr. Hayes disagrees. He believes what you did was exceptional, not ordinary." He gestured toward the limousine. "He would be honored if you would spare him a few minutes of your time." Olivia hesitated. She had a morning class at 8:30 a.m., and she preferred to arrive early to secure her favorite seat near the window. But curiosity was beginning to overcome her initial reluctance. How often did one get invited to meet a billionaire CEO? "How long will this take?" she asked. "I have class this morning. Mr. Hayes is aware of your schedule and promises to have you at your university with ample time to spare," James assured her. His office is only 15 minutes from campus. The idea that Alexander Hayes knew her schedule was slightly unsettling, but Olivia supposed that information wouldn't be difficult to obtain for someone of his resources. After a moment's further deliberation, she nodded. "All right, but I really can't be late for class." James smiled, a genuine expression this time. "I guarantee you won't be," he said, leading her to the limousine and opening the rear door. Olivia had never been in a vehicle so luxurious. The interior was spacious, with soft leather seats, dark-tinted windows, and what appeared to be a small refrigerator built into one side. A glass partition separated the passenger area from the driver's seat, offering privacy. As she settled onto the seat, feeling distinctly out of place in her modest clothing, James closed the door and walked around to the driver's side. Moments later, the limousine pulled smoothly away from the curb. "There are refreshments in the cooler if you'd like something," James informed her through an intercom. "Water, juice, coffee." "No, thank you," Olivia replied, too overwhelmed to consider eating or drinking anything. She sat stiffly, her backpack clutched on her lap like a shield, watching through the tinted windows as the city passed by. They moved through the modest neighborhood where she lived, then into the increasingly affluent downtown area, finally turning onto Harrington Avenue, a street lined with sleek skyscrapers housing the headquarters of various corporations. The limousine eventually stopped in front of a particularly impressive building 70 stories, of gleaming glass and steel reaching toward the sky. The words, "Hayes Tower," were displayed above the main entrance in elegant, understated lettering. James opened her door, and Olivia stepped out, craning her neck to take in the full height of the building. She had passed this tower many times, but had never had reason to enter it. Now, following James through the revolving doors, into a vast marble lobby, she felt distinctly out of her element. Security was tight but efficient. James escorted her to a special elevator that required a keycard to access, explaining that it would take them directly to the executive floor. As the elevator ascended rapidly, Olivia's stomach fluttered with nerves. "What exactly does Mr. Hayes want?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. James considered her question for a moment before responding. "Mr. Hayes values integrity above most other qualities. When he encounters it, he likes to acknowledge it personally." Before Olivia could press for a more specific answer, the elevator doors opened, revealing a reception area that looked more like an art gallery than an office. Contemporary paintings adorned the walls, and sculptures of varying styles were displayed on pedestals throughout the space. A sleek desk of what appeared to be a single piece of curved glass stood near the elevator, staffed by an elegant woman in a tailored suit. "Good morning, Ms. Bennett," the receptionist greeted her with a warm smile. "Mr. Hayes is expecting you. Please, follow me." Olivia trailed behind the woman, increasingly bewildered by the formality with which she was being treated. They walked down a corridor lined with more artwork, finally stopping at a set of double doors made of dark wood. The receptionist knocked softly, then opened one door after a muffled, "Come in," from within. "Ms. Bennett is here, sir," she announced, stepping aside to allow Olivia to enter. The office was vast and minimalist, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. A large desk of polished wood stood near the windows, and behind it, rising from a leather chair, was Alexander Hayes himself. He was taller than he had appeared in his driver's license photo, with broad shoulders and a posture that radiated confidence. His dark hair was neatly styled, and his face, while handsome, had a serious quality to it, with sharp cheekbones and a strong jawline. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that Olivia suspected cost more than her entire wardrobe. But it was his eyes that commanded attention, penetrating and intelligent. They seemed to evaluate everything they fell upon. "Ms. Bennett," he said, his voice deep and measured as he came around the desk. "Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat." He gestured to a seating area consisting of 2 leather armchairs facing a low table. Olivia moved to one of the chairs, perching on the edge rather than settling back comfortably. She placed her backpack on the floor beside her, acutely aware of how out of place it looked against the expensive furnishings. Hayes took the chair opposite her, studying her with an intensity that made Olivia resist the urge to fidget. "I understand you found my wallet yesterday," he said without preamble. "Yes," she confirmed, unsure what else to say. "I turned it into campus security. I hope everything was still inside." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "It was. Every dollar, every card, exactly as I left it." He leaned forward slightly. "Do you know how much cash was in that wallet, Ms. Bennett?" Olivia shook her head. "I didn't count it. It wasn't mine to count." $10,000, Hayes stated, watching her reaction carefully. Olivia's eyes widened. She had known there was a substantial amount, but hearing the actual figure was startling. "That's a lot to carry around," she said finally. "It is," he agreed, "especially to leave unattended on the park bench." Something in his tone made Olivia look at him more closely. There was a calculating quality to his expression, as if he was measuring her responses against some internal standard. "You left it there deliberately," she realized aloud, the pieces suddenly falling into place. "It was some kind of test." Hayes nodded, seemingly pleased by her quick understanding. "I've been conducting a social experiment of sorts. For the past month, I'd been leaving wallets in various locations around the city parks, coffee shops, libraries, universities. Each contains my real identification and $10,000 in cash." "Why?" Olivia asked, genuinely puzzled. "To see who would return them," he explained. "To test the honesty of people when faced with temptation and anonymity." He leaned back in his chair. "Out of the 50 wallets I've left, do you know how many have been returned with the money intact?" Olivia shook her head, though she had a sinking feeling the number wasn't high. 3, Hayes stated flatly, "just 3 out of 50. And yours was the most recent." A mixture of disappointment in humanity and pride in being one of the few honest finders warred within Olivia. She settled on saying, "I'm sorry to hear that. I would have hoped for better." "As did I," Hayes admitted, his expression somber. "But that's precisely why I wanted to meet you, Ms. Bennett. In a world where integrity seems increasingly rare, your actions stand out. Your honesty in a world of dishonesty is something I want to reward. Olivia shifted uncomfortably. That's really not necessary, Mr. Hayes. I didn't return your wallet for a reward. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Which is exactly why you deserve one. He countered smoothly. Tell me, what are you studying at the university? The sudden change in topic caught her off guard. Literature, she answered. I'm in my final year. And after graduation? What are your plans? Olivia hesitated. Her immediate plans were modest. Find a better paying job to support herself and help her mother, hopefully in a field related to her degree. Her dream of becoming a published author seemed too distant and unlikely to mention. I'm hoping to work in publishing or perhaps teaching, she said eventually. Hayes studied her, his gaze penetrating. Those are admirable paths. But I suspect there's something more specific you aspire to. Something perhaps you don't feel comfortable sharing. Olivia felt strangely exposed under his perceptive gaze. I write a little, she admitted reluctantly. Fiction, mostly. It's just a hobby. A hobby you're passionate about, Hayes observed. It wasn't a question. Do you hope to publish someday? Doesn't everyone who writes? Olivia replied with a small, self-deprecating smile. But it's not a realistic goal at the moment. I have student loans to repay, and my mother needs help with medical expenses. Practical concerns come first. Hayes nodded thoughtfully. Responsibility before dreams. I understand that all too well. He rose from his chair and walked to the windows, gazing out at the city below. For a moment, he was silent, apparently deep in thought. Olivia waited, unsure if she should speak or remain quiet. The entire situation felt surreal, sitting in a billionaire's office, discussing her modest hopes for the future while he contemplated. What, exactly? Finally, Hayes turned back to her. Ms. Bennett, I'd like to make you an offer. Not charity, but an opportunity, one that I believe could benefit us both. Olivia's curiosity was piqued despite her reservations. What kind of opportunity? I've recently established a foundation focused on supporting emerging talents in various fields, particularly those who demonstrate exceptional character alongside their abilities. He returned to his seat, his expression serious but not intimidating. I'd like to offer you a grant that would cover the remainder of your education expenses, including any outstanding student loans, as well as a stipend that would allow you to focus on your writing without financial pressure. Olivia stared at him, momentarily speechless. What he was proposing would completely transform her circumstances, removing the constant struggle that had defined her adult life thus far. It seemed too good to be true. Why? She finally managed to ask. Why me? Surely there are more deserving candidates, people with proven talent, not just someone who happened to find your wallet. Hayes leaned forward, his eyes intent. Character, Ms. Bennett, is as rare and valuable as talent, perhaps more so. I can identify individuals with technical skills or creative potential easily enough, but finding someone with unwavering integrity is far more challenging. He paused. The world is full of talented people who lack ethical foundations. I'm interested in supporting those who possess both. Olivia swallowed hard, trying to process what he was saying. And you determined all this about me because I returned a wallet? Actions reveal character, Hayes replied simply. Especially those taken when no one is watching, and there's significant personal benefit to making a different choice. The logic made a certain kind of sense, but Olivia still felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was offering. This is a lot to take in, she said honestly. Hayes nodded, apparently unsurprised by her reaction. Of course. I don't expect an immediate answer. Take time to consider the offer. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a business card, which he placed on the table between them. My private number is on the back. Call me when you've made your decision, whatever it may be. Olivia picked up the card, studying the embossed lettering. It was identical to the one she had seen in his wallet, except for the handwritten number on the reverse side. There's no deadline, Hayes added, his tone softer than it had been previously. And no obligation. If you decide this isn't right for you, I'll respect that choice just as much as if you accept. Gratitude and caution warred within Olivia. The offer was incredibly generous, potentially life-changing, but she had always been wary of things that seemed too good to be true. "Thank you," she said finally. "I'll think about it carefully." Hayes seemed satisfied with her response. He glanced at his watch. "I believe we've left enough time to get you to your class. James will drive you to campus." Olivia nodded, gathering her backpack and rising from the chair. Hayes stood as well, extending his hand. His handshake was firm but not overpowering, the gesture of someone accustomed to dealing with equals rather than subordinates. "Thank you for your time, Ms. Bennett," he said formally. "Regardless of your decision, it was a pleasure to meet someone who still believes in doing the right thing without expectation of reward." "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Hayes," Olivia replied, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice despite her internal turmoil. "I'll be in touch." As promised, James drove her to campus, depositing her outside the Humanities building with 20 minutes to spare before her first class. Olivia thanked him, then stood watching as the limousine pulled away, merging smoothly into the flow of traffic. The business card felt heavy in her pocket, a tangible reminder of the extraordinary encounter she had just experienced. She should have been focusing on her upcoming lecture, or mentally reviewing the essay she needed to finish by tomorrow, but instead, her mind was filled with questions. Who was Alexander Hayes, really? What was his true motivation for this social experiment? And the subsequent offer? And most importantly, what would accepting his proposal mean for her future? With these thoughts swirling through her mind, Olivia entered the building, attempting to set aside the morning's events and focus on the academic challenges ahead. But even as she took notes during her British literature lecture, part of her consciousness remained fixed on the decision she now faced, a decision that could potentially alter the course of her life. That evening, after her classes and a shift at the library, Olivia sat at her small kitchen table, Hayes's business card propped against a mug of tea. She had been staring at it for nearly an hour, mentally weighing the pros and cons of his offer. The benefits were obvious and significant. Financial freedom would allow her to focus on her studies and her writing without the constant pressure of making ends meet. She could help her mother with medical bills, perhaps even move her to a better facility. The opportunities that would open up with such support were almost dizzying to contemplate. But Olivia had never been one to accept assistance easily. Independence had been a necessity for so long that it had become part of her identity. Relying on someone else's generosity, especially as strangers, felt uncomfortable and precarious. "What's the catch?" she murmured to herself, tapping her fingers against the worn surface of the table. People like Alexander Hayes didn't accumulate vast wealth by making impulsive, altruistic gestures. There had to be something more to his offer than a simple appreciation of honesty. Reaching for her laptop, Olivia decided to research Hayes more thoroughly. She knew the basics: technology magnate, billionaire, founder of Hayes Innovations, but beyond that, he was largely a mystery to her. The search results painted a picture of an intensely private but undeniably successful businessman. Hayes had founded his company 12 years ago, focusing initially on renewable energy solutions before expanding into various technology sectors. Unlike many of his peers, he avoided social media, rarely gave interviews, and seemed to shun the limelight that typically accompanied such wealth and influence. Most interesting to Olivia were the scattered mentions of his philanthropic activities. Hayes had established several charitable foundations over the years, each with a specific focus: education for underprivileged children, medical research for rare diseases, environmental conservation. But unlike many billionaire philanthropists, he didn't publicize his giving, rarely attached his name to initiatives, and never seemed to use his charity for public relations purposes. An article from a business magazine caught her attention. It described Hayes as the billionaire who tests potential employees by deliberately creating ethical dilemmas during the interview process, sometimes even after making provisional job offers. According to former employees quoted in the piece, Hayes valued character and integrity above all other qualities, sometimes choosing candidates with less experience or credentials if they demonstrated stronger ethical foundations. So, this is his pattern, Olivia realized aloud. The wallet experiment wasn't just a random social study, it was consistent with how Hayes operated in all aspects of his life. Another article described how Hayes had grown up in modest circumstances, the son of a factory worker and a nurse in a small industrial town. His academic brilliance had earned him scholarships to prestigious universities, where he had excelled in both engineering and business before launching his first company at 26. Self-made, Olivia murmured, finding herself somewhat reassured by this detail. At least he hadn't always been insulated by extreme wealth. He had known struggle, even if it was now a distant memory. As she continued reading, she discovered that Hayes was involved in a foundation specifically designed to support emerging writers, the Hayes Literary Initiative, which provided grants and mentorship to promising authors who might otherwise abandon their craft due to financial constraints. This discovery gave her pause. Was this the program he was considering her for? If so, the offer seemed less random and more aligned with his established philanthropic interests. After 2 hours of research, Olivia closed her laptop, feeling slightly more informed but no closer to a decision. Hayes appeared to be genuine in his commitment to supporting talent and rewarding integrity, but accepting his offer would still mean entering an unfamiliar world with its own unwritten rules and expectations. She reached for her phone, scrolling to her mother's number. If anyone could provide perspective on this situation, it would be Olivia Bennett. Her mother answered on the third ring, her voice warm despite the audible fatigue. "Livy, this is a nice surprise. I wasn't expecting to hear from you until Sunday." "Hi, Mom," Olivia said, already feeling calmer at the sound of her mother's voice. "I hope I'm not calling too late." "Never too late to hear from you, honey. Is everything all right? You sound preoccupied." Olivia smiled faintly. Her mother had always been able to read her mood, even over the phone. Something happened today. Something unexpected. She proceeded to explain the events of the past 2 days, finding the wallet, turning it in, and the subsequent meeting with Hayes. When she finished, her mother was silent for a moment, digesting the information. "Well," she finally said, "that's certainly not an everyday occurrence." Olivia laughed softly. "No, definitely not. I'm not sure what to make of it, to be honest. The offer seems incredible, but you're wondering if there are strings attached," her mother finished for her. "I raised you to be cautious, but I also raised you to recognize genuine opportunities when they present themselves." "And you think this is genuine?" Olivia asked, valuing her mother's intuition. Eleanor sighed thoughtfully. "From what you've told me, and from what I've heard about this man, yes, I do. He sounds like someone who values the same principles I tried to instill in you: honesty, integrity, hard work." She paused. "But more importantly, what does your gut tell you, Livy?" Olivia considered the question seriously. "That he's sincere," she admitted. "Eccentric maybe, but sincere. I didn't get the impression he was trying to manipulate me, or that he had ulterior motives." "Then perhaps this is one of those rare moments when the universe offers something good without requiring suffering in exchange," her mother suggested gently. "Those moments do exist, even if they're not common in our experience." Olivia smiled at her mother's perspective. Olivia Bennett had faced more than her share of hardships, yet had somehow maintained an underlying optimism that Olivia had always admired. "I still feel strange accepting help from a stranger," she confessed. "Is that pride talking?" her mother asked, not unkindly. "Pride has its place, but it can also stand in the way of opportunities. This man is offering you a chance to pursue your dreams without the constant struggle we've known. There's no shame in accepting that kind of help, especially when you've earned it through your own integrity." The words resonated with Olivia. Perhaps her reluctance was indeed rooted in pride, rather than genuine concern. "I'll think about that," she promised. "Do," her mother encouraged. "And remember, accepting help when it's offered isn't weakness. Sometimes it's the most courageous choice you can make." After talking with her mother for a while longer, touching on other topics, Olivia hung up feeling more settled. She still hadn't made a firm decision, but the conversation had helped clarify her thoughts. She picked up Hayes's business card again, studying it as if it might reveal additional insights. Then, with a decisive motion, she placed it on her nightstand. She would sleep on the decision, giving her subconscious time to process all the information she had gathered. Tomorrow, she would either call the number on the back of the card or put the entire extraordinary encounter behind her and continue on her current path. Either way, it would be her choice, made with full awareness of the potential consequences. As she prepared for bed, Olivia found herself reflecting on how quickly life could change. 24 hours ago, her concerns had been mundane: finishing assignments, paying bills, maintaining her grueling schedule. Now, she stood at a potential turning point, all because she had done what she considered the only reasonable thing: returning a lost wallet to its owner. Perhaps, she thought, as she drifted towards sleep, there was something to be said for the unexpected turns life sometimes took. Perhaps sometimes, just sometimes, doing the right thing led not just to peace of mind, but to previously unimagined possibilities. Morning arrived with surprising clarity for Olivia. She woke before her alarm, her mind already active and her decision made. After showering and dressing, she sat on the edge of her bed and reached for Hayes's business card and her phone. The call was answered on the second ring. "Alexander Hayes," came the now familiar voice, direct and efficient. "Mr. Hayes, this is Olivia Bennett," she said, grateful that her voice sounded steadier than she felt. "Ms. Bennett," he acknowledged, his tone warming slightly. "I'm glad to hear from you. Have you reached a decision?" "I have," Olivia confirmed. She took a deep breath. "I'd like to accept your offer, with one condition." There was a brief pause before Hayes responded. "I'm listening." "I want to earn this opportunity," Olivia explained. "Not just receive it as a reward for returning your wallet. If you're offering this grant because you genuinely believe in my potential, I want the chance to prove that your faith is justified." Hayes was silent for a moment, and Olivia wondered if she had overstepped. Then she heard what might have been a soft chuckle. "Most people would simply accept good fortune without question. Your response continues to impress me, Ms. Bennett." "Is that a yes?" Olivia asked cautiously. "It is," Hayes confirmed. "And as it happens, your condition aligns with my intentions. This isn't charity. It's an investment in someone I believe has both talent and character." Relief and a new sense of determination flooded through Olivia. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes. There are details to discuss," he continued, his tone shifting to something more businesslike. "Could you come to my office again this afternoon? Say 2 o'clock? We can formalize the arrangement and address any questions you might have." Olivia quickly reviewed her schedule in her mind. She had classes until noon, but her afternoon was relatively open. 2 o'clock works for me," she confirmed. "Excellent. James will pick you up at your apartment at 1:30. After confirming a few more details, Olivia ended the call, a mixture of excitement and nervousness coursing through her. She had just taken the first step down an entirely new path, one that diverged dramatically from the careful, practical route she had been following for years. As promised, James arrived in the limousine precisely at 1:30. The drive to Hayes Tower was silent, giving Olivia time to gather her thoughts. She had prepared a list of questions, wanting to ensure she fully understood what she was agreeing to before making any final commitments. This time, the imposing building and luxurious surroundings felt slightly less intimidating. She was still acutely aware of not belonging in such an environment, but the initial shock had worn off somewhat. When she entered Hayes's office, she found him standing at a small conference table rather than behind his desk, several folders neatly arranged before him. "Ms. Bennett," he greeted her, gesturing to a chair. "Please, sit down. Would you like something to drink? Coffee, tea, water?" "Water would be fine, thank you," Olivia replied, taking the offered seat. She placed her notebook on the table, opened to the page where she had written her questions. Hayes noticed the preparation with apparent approval. He pressed a button on the table, and moments later a young assistant appeared with 2 glasses of water, departing silently after placing them on the table. "I appreciate thoroughness," Hayes remarked, nodding toward her notebook. "It suggests a thoughtful approach to important decisions." Olivia smiled slightly, feeling more confident. "I believe in understanding what I'm committing to." "As do I," Hayes agreed. He opened one of the folders and extracted several documents. "What I'm proposing is a 2-year grant through the Hayes Literary Initiative. It would cover your remaining educational expenses, including any outstanding student loans, plus a monthly stipend of $5,000 to allow you to focus on your writing." End quote. Olivia blinked at the figure. $5,000 a month was more than double what she currently managed to earn from her 2 part-time jobs combined, and that was with barely a moment to spare in her schedule. Hayes continued, seemingly unaware of her surprise. "In return, you would be expected to participate in the initiative's mentorship program, which pairs emerging writers with established authors for regular feedback and guidance. You would also attend quarterly workshops with other grant recipients and submit progress reports on your writing projects." "That seems more than reasonable," Olivia said, somewhat dazed by the generosity of the terms. "The stipend would be deposited directly into your account on the 1st of each month," Hayes added. "And there would be additional funds available for writing-related expenses, research trips, writing conferences, specialized software, whatever you might need to pursue your craft effectively." Olivia looked down at her list of questions, many of which had already been answered. She moved to one that remained. "What are your expectations regarding my writing output? Is there a specific quantity or type of work you'll be looking for?" Hayes seemed pleased by the question. "Quality over quantity," he stated firmly. "We're interested in supporting the development of your voice and skills, not in imposing arbitrary deadlines or word counts. That said, we do expect consistent effort and dedication to the craft." Olivia nodded, relieved by this approach. "And what about rights to anything I produce during this period?" "All rights remain entirely yours," Hayes assured her. "The initiative makes no claim whatsoever on the intellectual property of our grant recipients. Our goal is to support talent, not to profit from it." This was better than Olivia had dared to hope. Most writing competitions or grants she had researched in the past had included at least some rights to the work produced. "That's extremely generous," she acknowledged. Hayes's expression grew serious. "Ms. Bennett, I should be clear about something. I don't involve myself personally with every recipient of grants from my various foundations. Most are selected by committees and administered by foundation staff. Your bereft situation is somewhat unique." Olivia frowned slightly. "Because of how we met?" "Partly," Hayes conceded. "But also because I've read some of your work." This statement caught her completely off guard. "You've what? How is that possible?" A hint of a smile touched Hayes's lips. "After our meeting yesterday, I was curious. A simple search revealed that you've published several short stories in literary journals under the name O.E. Bennett. They were quite impressive." Olivia felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment and a touch of pride. She had published a handful of stories in small, respectable journals, but had assumed they were read by few outside academic circles. The idea that Alexander Hayes had sought them out and read them was both flattering and slightly unnerving. "I particularly appreciated The Glass Hour," Hayes continued. "Your exploration of how time distorts perspective was remarkably insightful for a writer your age." "Thank you," Olivia said softly, genuinely moved by the specific reference. "That one is special to me." Hayes nodded, as if he had suspected as much. "Talent like yours deserves support and development. The wallet incident simply brought you to my attention. Your writing convinced me you were worthy of investment." This revelation changed Olivia's perception of the offer. It wasn't simply charity or a reward for honesty. Hayes had actually evaluated her work and found merit in it. The knowledge bolstered her confidence in accepting his help. "Now," Hayes said, returning to the documents before him, "these papers outline the terms we've discussed. Take your time reading through them. If you have any questions or concerns, we can address them before you sign." Olivia spent the next half hour carefully reviewing the agreement. True to Hayes's word, it was straightforward and generous, with no hidden clauses or concerning stipulations. The money would be hers to use as she saw fit, though there was a clear expectation that she would prioritize her writing. The mentorship and workshop participation were presented as opportunities rather than burdensome obligations. When she finally signed the forms, Olivia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The constant financial pressure that had been her companion for so long. In its place was a new sense of possibility, of doors opening where before there had only been walls. Hayes signed the documents as well, then extended his hand to seal the agreement. Welcome to the Hayes Literary Initiative, Ms. Bennett. I look forward to seeing what you'll accomplish. As Olivia shook his hand, she couldn't help but ask the question that had been lingering in her mind. Mr. Hayes, may I ask, why do you do this? Create these foundations, support strangers, conduct social experiments about honesty. What do you get from it? Hayes considered the question thoughtfully, seemingly not offended by her directness. When I was younger than you are now, he said finally, someone took a chance on me, a professor who recognized potential where others saw only a scholarship student from the wrong background. That single act of faith changed my life's trajectory. He paused, his gaze distant for a moment. I suppose I'm paying that forward, in my own way. It was the most personal thing he had shared with her, offering a glimpse of the man behind the billionaire facade. Olivia nodded, understanding and respecting his motivation. Thank you, she said simply. Not just for the opportunity, but for believing that honesty still matters in this world. It matters more than ever, Hayes replied, his expression serious again. In a time when it seems increasingly rare. As James drove her back to her apartment, Olivia stared out the window at the city passing by, seeing it with new eyes. 24 hours ago, she had been struggling to balance work, school, and her passion for writing, always sacrificing something for the demands of survival. Now, she had been granted the most precious resource of all, time. Time to write, time to develop her craft, time to pursue her dreams, without the constant specter of financial insecurity. All because she had found a wallet, and done what she considered the only decent thing: return it to its owner. Life, Olivia reflected, sometimes turned on the smallest of moments, the simplest of choices. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel something she had carefully guarded against for so long: hope. Not just for survival, but for the possibility of thriving, of creating something meaningful, of following her passion without compromise. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of change for Olivia. The first $5,000 deposit appeared in her account as promised, and she immediately put a portion of it toward her mother's medical expenses. The relief in Eleanor Bennett's voice, when Olivia called to tell her she wouldn't have to worry about the bills anymore, was worth more than any personal luxury Olivia could have purchased. She gave notice at both her part-time jobs, explaining that she had received a grant that would allow her to focus on her studies and writing. Her co-workers were surprised but supportive, and Mrs. Winters at the library actually teared up a bit, confessing that she had always hoped Olivia would find a way to pursue her literary ambitions. You're too talented to spend your life reshelving other people's books, the older woman had said, patting Olivia's hand. Now you'll write books that others will shelve. With her newfound freedom, Olivia established a writing routine that would have been impossible before. She converted the small second bedroom of her apartment, which had previously served as storage, into a dedicated writing space. A desk by the window, a comfortable chair, a laptop that didn't freeze every time she opened multiple documents, simple changes that transformed her relationship with her work. She wrote every morning, using the hours when her mind was freshest to create new material. Afternoons were for classes, reading, and research. Evenings often involved revising what she had written in the morning or exploring new ideas in her journal. For the first time since childhood, her creativity wasn't squeezed into the margins of a life dominated by necessity. It had room to breathe and grow. The Hayes Literary Initiative proved to be everything Alexander Hayes had described, and more. Olivia was assigned a mentor, Eliza Thornfield, an acclaimed novelist whose work she had long admired. Their first meeting, conducted via video call, left Olivia both intimidated and inspired. I've read your published stories, Thornfield had said without preamble, her sharp features animated by genuine interest. You have a distinct voice, Ms. Bennett. Raw in places, but undeniably yours. That's something many writers never achieve, even after decades of practice. Coming from Thornfield, whose precision with language was legendary, the praise meant everything. But the veteran author wasn't just offering flattery. She provided specific, detailed feedback on Olivia's work, highlighting both strengths to cultivate and weaknesses to address. Your characters breathe, Thornfield noted during one session. But your plots sometimes meander. Structure is not the enemy of creativity, It's the scaffold that allows it to climb higher. Olivia absorbed these lessons hungrily, applying them to her current project, a novel she had conceptualized years ago, but never had the time or energy to develop fully. It was a coming-of-age story set in a small coastal town, exploring themes of identity, belonging, and the weight of family expectations. The quarterly workshop brought her into contact with other grant recipients, a diverse group of writers from various backgrounds and at different stages in their careers. Some were poets, others wrote literary fiction like Olivia, and a few worked in genre fiction or creative nonfiction. What they shared was serious commitment to their craft and gratitude for the opportunity the initiative provided. During these workshops, Olivia was surprised to discover that Alexander Hayes himself occasionally attended, observing quietly from the back of the room or engaging in thoughtful conversation during breaks. He never announced his visits in advance, and he made no special effort to speak with Olivia, treating her the same as any other recipient. She appreciated this approach. It allowed her to feel she was truly being evaluated on her merit, rather than receiving special treatment due to the unusual circumstances of their meeting. 4 months into the program, Olivia received an unexpected email from Hayes. It was brief and to the point. Your latest progress report indicates significant development in your novel. I would be interested in discussing it further, if you're amenable. Dinner at Meridian, tomorrow at 7 p.m.? Alexander Hayes. Meridian was one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, the kind of place Olivia had never imagined dining. Her immediate instinct was to feel intimidated, but she quickly reminded herself that she had earned her place in the initiative. Hayes wasn't offering charity. He was expressing professional interest in her work. With that perspective, she replied, accepting the invitation. The next evening found her stepping out of a taxi she had declined Hayes's offer to send James and Na. In front of Meridian, dressed in the nicest outfit she owned, a simple black dress she had purchased for literary events, paired with modest heels and her mother's pearl earrings. The maitre d' led her to a private dining area separated from the main restaurant by frosted glass panels. Hayes was already seated, rising politely as she approached. He wore a gray suit that somehow looked both impeccably tailored and comfortably casual on his tall frame. "Ms. Bennett," he greeted her. "Thank you for joining me on such short notice." "Thank you for the invitation," Olivia replied, taking the offered seat. "Though I admit, I was surprised to receive it." Hayes signaled to a waiter, who appeared instantly to pour water and present menus. Once they were alone again, he explained, "I make a point of following the progress of all initiative participants, but I've been particularly impressed with your recent work. Your mentor shared excerpts from your novel with your permission, of course, and I found them very compelling." Olivia felt a flutter of pride. She had been pouring her heart into the manuscript, and recognition of that effort, especially from someone like Hayes, was deeply satisfying. "That's very kind of you to say." "Not kind," Hayes corrected. "Accurate. There's a raw honesty in your writing that resonates. You don't flinch from difficult truths, yet you render them with compassion." The specific nature of his praise suggested he had indeed read her work carefully. They spent the first course discussing the novel's themes and characters, with Hayes offering insightful observations that demonstrated genuine engagement with the material. As the main course arrived, a delicate sea bass for Olivia, steak for Has, the conversation shifted to broader literary topics. Olivia was surprised to discover the depth of Hayes's knowledge and appreciation for literature. For someone who had made his fortune in technology and energy, he possessed a remarkably nuanced understanding of narrative techniques and literary traditions. "Most people assume my interests begin and end with profit margins and technological innovation," Hayes remarked, noting her surprise. "But I've always believed that to understand humanity, one must engage with its stories. Literature offers insights no balance sheet or algorithm ever could. Is that why you established the literary initiative?" And, Olivia asked. "Because you value stories?" Hayes considered the question as he sipped his water. "Partly," he acknowledged. "But it's also because I recognize that in our current economic system, creating arc-weather literature, music, visual arts has become increasingly untenable as a career path for all but the most privileged or the exceptionally lucky. Talent alone isn't enough anymore, if it ever was. The initiative is my small attempt to address That's structural inequity. Olivia was struck by the political dimension of his philanthropy, something she hadn't fully appreciated before. You're not just supporting individual writers, you're making a statement about what our society should value. Precisely, Hayes confirmed, looking pleased by her understanding. Individual charity is necessary but insufficient. Systems need to change. While I work toward that larger goal through policy advocacy and corporate practices, the foundations allow me to mitigate some of the harm in the meantime. This perspective cast Hayes in a new light for Olivia. He wasn't simply a wealthy man assuaging his conscience through charitable giving. He had a coherent philosophical framework that informed both his business decisions and his philanthropy. As their dinner concluded with coffee and a shared dessert, Hayes made an unexpected proposition. The initiative is hosting a benefit gala next month, a necessary evil to secure additional funding and support. I typically say a few words, but this year, I'd like one of our recipients to speak about their experience and their work. He paused, his gaze steady. Would you consider representing the program? Olivia nearly choked on her coffee. Public speaking had never been her forte. She preferred to let her writing speak for her. Me? But there must be more accomplished recipients who would make better representatives. Accomplishment isn't the only criterion, Hayes replied calmly. Your journey exemplifies exactly what the initiative aims to achieve, identifying talent that might otherwise be lost to financial necessity and providing the support needed to nurture it. He added, with what might have been a hint of humor. Besides, I believe the story of how you came to join the program would resonate with potential donors. Put that way, Olivia could see the logic. Her unusual entry into the initiative did make for a compelling narrative. Still, the prospect of addressing a room full of wealthy, influential people was daunting. What exactly would I need to do? She asked cautiously. A 5-minute speech about your experience with the initiative and your current work, Hayes explained. Nothing elaborate, just authentic. These events tend toward the performative, genuine passion and purpose stand out. Olivia took a deep breath. It was far outside her comfort zone, but then again, so was dining with a billionaire at an exclusive restaurant, and that was going surprisingly well. Perhaps this was another opportunity for growth. All right, she agreed. I'll do it. Hayes nodded, seeming pleased but not surprised by her acceptance. Excellent. My assistant will be in touch with the details. He signaled for the check. And, Ms. Bennett, while I understand your inclination toward modesty, don't underestimate the impact of your voice. Your writing shows that you have important things to say. The gala is simply another platform. The words stayed with Olivia long after dinner had concluded and Hayes had seen her safely into a taxi home. Don't underestimate the impact of your voice. It was something she had never really considered, before the idea that her perspective might have value beyond her own satisfaction in expressing it. The month leading up to the gala was busy for Olivia. Between her regular writing schedule, classes, mentorship sessions, and now preparing for her speech, she barely had time to consider how dramatically her life had changed since that autumn day in the park. But occasionally, usually late at night, when she paused in her writing to gaze out her window at the city lights, the full weight of it would hit her. 6 months ago, she'd been barely keeping her head above water, her creative aspirations relegated to whatever scraps of time and energy remained after survival needs were met. Now, she was writing daily, receiving guidance from one of her literary heroes, and preparing to speak at a gala attended by some of the city's most influential figures. All because she had found a wallet and done what she considered the only decent thing: return it to its owner. The night of the gala arrived with both excitement and trepidation for Olivia. Hayes had arranged for a professional stylist to help her prepare, resulting in a transformation that left her hardly recognizing the woman in the mirror. Her usually practical ponytail had been styled into an elegant updo, her makeup was subtle but enhancing, and the midnight blue gown provided for the occasion fit her perfectly, making her feel quaint, simultaneously sophisticated and authentic. The venue was a historic building in the heart of the city, its grand ballroom illuminated by crystal chandeliers that cast a warm glow over the assembled guests. Olivia recognized a few faces from magazine covers and news reports: business leaders, philanthropists, a renowned conductor, even a former governor. Hayes found her at the edge of the room, where she had been observing the crowd while gathering her courage. "You look magnificent," he said by way of greeting, his typical reserve softened by what appeared to be genuine approval. "Thank you," Olivia replied, fighting the urge to fidget with her dress. "For everything, not just the compliment. I never imagined being in a place like this, with people like this." "Yet you belong here as much as anyone," Hayes stated with quiet conviction. "Perhaps more so. Most of these people inherited their positions or achieved them through paths already well-trodden. You're forging something new through sheer talent and determination." Before Olivia could respond to this unexpected affirmation, Hayes was called away to greet some important donors. Left alone again, she circulated cautiously through the room, occasionally exchanging pleasantries with other guests, but mostly observing the social dynamics at play. She noticed that Hayes moved through the crowd with practiced ease, attentive and engaged with each person he spoke to, yet somehow maintaining a certain distance. It was a skillful performance, Olivia realized. One that allowed him to fulfill his social obligations without revealing much of himself. When it came time for the speeches, Hayes spoke first, providing an overview of the initiative's mission and achievements. His delivery was polished, yet understated, focusing on the recipient's accomplishments rather than his own role in enabling them. Then, it was Olivia's turn. As she took her place at the podium, facing the expectant faces of people whose combined net worth probably exceeded the GDP of several small nations, she felt a moment of panic. What did she, a scholarship student who until recently had been working 2 jobs to make rent, have to say to this audience? But then she remembered Hayes's words, "Don't underestimate the impact of your voice." She had earned her place here, not through wealth or connection, but through her integrity and her talent. That realization steadied her. "Good evening," she began, her voice stronger than she had expected. "My name is Olivia Bennett, and 6 months ago, I found a wallet on a park bench." She paused, allowing the seemingly mundane statement to register. It was a beautiful wallet, expensive leather, clearly belonging to someone who wouldn't miss the money inside. And there was a lot of money inside. She saw interest kindling in the audience's eyes, the practiced politeness giving way to genuine curiosity. "I was a struggling student with mounting debt and a mother with medical bills. For a brief moment, I considered what that money could do for us." Another pause. "But only for a moment, because my mother raised me to believe that integrity isn't a luxury for the financially secure, it's a necessity for being human." As Olivia continued her story, describing the return of the wallet and the unexpected meeting with Hayes the following day, she noticed something surprising. These wealthy, powerful people were really listening to her story of ordinary decency. Perhaps, she realized, because true integrity was something even money couldn't buy. She concluded by sharing how the initiative had transformed her life, not just financially but creatively and personally. "Before receiving this grant, I wrote in the margins of my life late at night after exhausting shifts, during brief breaks between classes and jobs. Now, I write at the center of my life, giving voice to stories that might otherwise never be told." That shift from margin to center is what the Hayes Literary Initiative makes possible, and it's more valuable than any amount of money. The applause that followed her speech seemed genuine, not merely polite. As she made her way back to her seat, several people stopped her to express appreciation for her words. One elderly woman with diamonds at her throat pressed Olivia's hand between her own and said simply, "My dear, you've reminded me of something important tonight. Thank you." Hayes found her later, as the event was winding down. "You made quite an impression," he noted, his expression difficult to read. "Several potential donors have already approached me about increasing their support." "I'm glad," Olivia said sincerely. "The initiative deserves all the funding it can get." Hayes studied her for a moment. "You spoke eloquently about the transition from writing in the margins to writing at the center of your life. May I ask, has it been worth it? The change, the exposure, the expectations that come with opportunity?" The question seemed to carry weight beyond simple curiosity. Olivia considered it carefully before answering. "Yes," she said finally. "Even with the challenges and adjustments, it's been worth it. Not just because I can write more, but because I can write better." Financial security creates space for creative risk, for failing and trying again, for pursuing excellence rather than just completion. Something in Hayes's expression suggested her answer had significance beyond the immediate conversation. "I believe you've justified my experiment, Ms. Bennett," he said quietly. "The wallet experiment?" Olivia asked, confused by the shift in topic. "In a sense," Hayes replied. "But the larger experiment was about whether identifying and supporting honest individuals of talent could produce meaningful results, not just for the recipients, but for society as a whole." Olivia was struck by the scope of his thinking. While she had been focused on her personal journey, Hayes had been considering systemic implications. "And your conclusion?" A rare, genuine smile crossed his features, promising early results, though more data is needed. But tonight was certainly a positive indicator. The gala concluded shortly afterward, with Olivia departing with a sense of having crossed an invisible threshold. She had entered a world vastly different from her own, and found that she could navigate it without compromising her identity or values. It was a discovery both empowering and humbling. The following weeks brought unexpected developments. Olivia's speech at the Gala had attracted attention not just from donors, but from literary circles as well. A prestigious literary magazine requested one of her short stories for publication, and an editor at a publishing house expressed interest in seeing her novel when it was completed. Her mentor, Eliza Thornfield, was particularly pleased by these developments. "The initiative opens doors," she explained during one of their sessions, "but you still have to walk through them on your own merit. This interest is based on the quality of your work, not charity." The validation was deeply satisfying for Olivia. She had always believed in her writing, even during the darkest periods when pursuing it seemed impossibly impractical. Now, that belief was being affirmed by professionals in the field she aspired to enter. As her first year in the program approached its conclusion, Olivia received another unexpected email from Hayes, requesting a meeting in his office. She arrived, curious but no longer intimidated by the imposing building or the trappings of wealth it contained. Hayes welcomed her with his usual reserve. But Olivia had learned to recognize the subtle signs of warmth beneath his controlled exterior. The slight relaxation around his eyes, the faint upward curve of his mouth that wasn't quite a smile that indicated pleasure. Nonetheless, "Your novel is progressing well, according to your mentor's reports," he began, after they were seated in the now familiar chairs by the window. "It is," Olivia confirmed. "I've completed a draft and am now deep in revisions. Eliza has been invaluable in helping me strengthen the structure while maintaining the emotional core." Hayes nodded approvingly. "She mentioned you're handling criticism with remarkable grace, incorporating suggestions that serve the work while standing firm when necessary to protect your vision. That's a rare balance in writers at any stage." Olivia couldn't help but feel pleased by this assessment. "I respect Eliza's expertise, but ultimately, it's my story to tell." "Precisely the right attitude," Hayes agreed. He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. "I've called you here today because I have a proposal that goes beyond your current grant." Intrigued, Olivia leaned forward slightly. "What kind of proposal?" I'm establishing a new division within Hayes Innovations focused on digital storytelling, interactive narratives, enhanced ebooks, immersive literary experiences, technology in service of literature, rather than replacing it." His gaze was intent. "I'd like you to join the creative development team once you complete your degree." The offer caught Olivia completely off guard. She had been so focused on her novel and her studies that she hadn't given much thought to specific career paths beyond graduation. "But I'm a writer, not a technologist," she said finally. "Exactly why I want you involved," Hayes explained. "This division needs people who understand narrative from the inside, who can ensure that technology enhances rather than diminishes the literary experience." He leaned back slightly. "You wouldn't be required to abandon your creative writing. In fact, I'd expect you to continue developing your own work. This role would be complementary, providing financial stability while allowing you to contribute to shaping how stories are experienced in the digital age." It was a compelling vision, and Olivia felt drawn to it despite her surprise. The idea of helping to create new formats for storytelling, of being at the intersection of literature and technology, was unexpectedly appealing. May I ask why me, specifically? She inquired. Surely there are more established writers you could approach, people with more experience in both literature and technology. Hayes's expression was evaluative, but not cold. Experience can be acquired. Character and authentic talent are rarer commodities. He paused. When you found my wallet that day in the park, you demonstrated not just honesty, but a fundamental decency that informs your writing and would inform your work in this new role. I need people who understand that technology without humanity is ultimately meaningless. The explanation resonated with Olivia. She had never considered how her approach to life might translate to professional contexts beyond her writing, but Hayes's assessment made a certain kind of sense. I'd like to think about it, she said finally. It's an incredible opportunity, but I want to be sure I can contribute meaningfully. Hayes nodded, apparently expecting this response. Of course. Take whatever time you need. The position would be available after your graduation in May. As Olivia left the office, her mind was already processing the possibilities this unexpected offer presented. It wasn't what she had imagined for her post-graduation life, but it offered an intriguing blend of creativity and practicality. More importantly, it suggested that Hayes saw in her not just literary potential, but broader capabilities she hadn't fully recognized in herself. The decision wasn't immediate. Olivia consulted with her mentor, who provided balanced insight on the pros and cons of accepting such a position. She spoke with her mother, who reminded her that growth often comes from embracing the unexpected. She even reached out to a few of the other initiative recipients who had completed the program, seeking their perspectives on life after the grant. In the end, her choice came down to a simple realization. Alexander Hayes had seen something in her worth investing in, first through the initiative and now through this job offer. His faith in her abilities, stemming initially from her honest return of his wallet, had already transformed her life in ways she could never have anticipated. Perhaps it was time to trust that vision and see where it might lead. 2 weeks later, she returned to Hayes Tower with her answer. I'd like to accept your offer, she told Hayes. I believe I can contribute something valuable to this new division while continuing to develop as a writer. Hayes's expression reflected genuine pleasure. I'm delighted to hear it. I believe this arrangement will benefit us both. He extended his hand to seal the agreement. Welcome to Hayes Innovations, Ms. Bennett. Or may I call you Olivia, now that we'll be colleagues? The shift to a first-name basis seemed to mark a transition in their relationship, not to friendship, exactly, but to a new kind of professional respect. Olivia is fine, she agreed, shaking his hand. Thank you for the opportunity, Alexander. As she left the tower that day, Olivia found herself reflecting on the extraordinary chain of events that had led her to this point. A lost wallet, an instinctive act of honesty, an unexpected reward, and now a career opportunity that promised to challenge and engage her in ways she had never imagined. Life, she had learned, could pivot on the smallest of moments, the simplest of choices. Her decision to return that wallet hadn't been made with any expectation of reward. It had simply been the right thing to do. Yet that single act of integrity had set in motion a sequence of opportunities that had fundamentally altered her trajectory. Standing on the sidewalk outside Hayes Tower, looking up at the soaring glass and steel structure that would soon be part of her professional life, Olivia felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for Alexander Hayes and his generosity, but for her mother's moral teachings, for her own stubborn persistence in pursuing her passion despite obstacles, and for the strange, unpredictable patterns of chance and choice that comprised a life. The shy girl who had once returned a wallet without expectation of reward had found not just financial security, but a path forward that honored both her integrity and her talents. It was a reminder, Olivia thought as she turned toward home, that in a world that often seemed to reward the wrong things, sometimes, just sometimes, doing the right thing could lead to unexpected blessings. And that was a story worth telling.